setting sail and getting out, right? Sailing out of Seaview.
And that amazing moment when he hits.
Wait, no,
I'm sorry.
I'm getting there. I'm getting the thing.
Sorry, I'm getting excited too.
The story. Yeah, he sets sail. I'm trying to build it up for the audience.
Sorry, guys, please let me finish what you say.
Anyway, they. So we were chatting before about Lost and how that ended, and you were talking about Severance, the show you started, and that we all hope that didn't end badly. And we were talking recently about I Am Legend. Do you remember a couple of weeks ago?
Yeah.
We were talking about they're going to do a second one. We talked about how that had a really bad ending, and it was so bad that the alternate ending was also like widely circulated. People talked about that. And people get confused. Even I get confused about which ending was the real ending.
Yeah, that's a fun one, isn't it?
And it's funny because you and I have been talking a lot recently about our favorite movie endings and and also like famous bad movie endings.
Yeah.
So I think this is a good opportunity for us to like dig out our notes and really tackle and get into what endings work for us, what don't, famous bad ones, honorable mentions, TV as well.
Yeah.
Just to begin this as well, if we're going to talk about endings, well, I think we need to just say this is going to be a spoiler-heavy conversation.
Yeah, if we bring up a film and you haven't seen it, some of them will be very famous, I assume, and I'm sure you have seen them, but like you might not want them spoiled. Try to skip ahead.
Maybe we can put the time codes in.
You saw the title, you saw the thumbnail, you assume we're going to be spoiling some films.
We want to have an interesting film debate, and sometimes you can't do that without spoiling stuff.
Yeah.
And endings are a really important part of the film. You know, that the last 10 minutes of a film, that's what you remember when you leave the cinema.
Isn't that amazing? Like how many times growing up you've heard like, oh, but the ending was awful, or how irritated you can feel no matter how good a film is for 80% of its runtime, but it just completely doesn't stick the landing. It can actually ruin.
There are great
the whole
films
experience.
with bad endings, and there are good films. Well, I don't know if there are bad films with good endings.
Yeah, and I think we were like, let's talk about the bad endings. But I was like, let's not just be negative for like 20 minutes.
Some are ambiguous, some are debatable.
Some are debatable. I have a controversial one.
What are you thinking? What do you want to kick
Should we start good or bad? Do you want to do good or bad?
Why don't we start with good and lay the groundwork with why we think what works in an ending?
I'm going to do a good ending, okay?
All
This is, I think, a really satisfying ending for a great film. And this is the ending of Dead Poets Society.
Okay, to Dead Poets Society, I have seen once, and of course, now I've just remembered, it's iconic.
Oh, Captain, my Captain.
Yeah, referenced. Yeah, okay, sure.
Yeah, I mean, I like to think of the ending of Dead Poets Society as the most like punk rock and roll. Like F you, it is. It's like F the society and the man. He's like, Mr. Keedy, leave this classroom.
And all the kids. But Dead Poets Society, I know you say that's like F you and punk, is the most like schmaltzy, like saccharine, like seize the day, you white privileged middle class,
exactly,
New Englanders. Come on, boys.
And these kids, they have this awful tragedy that happens to one of their friends at the end.
I think we can go back even further. Hang on.
Go for it.
Some people may not, Dead Poets Society. Okay, it's
huge coming of age tale.
It's in the 50s, right?
I want to say 50s or 60s,
and
but
it's
something
got
like that.
It's class of
young boys at a really stuffy, very strict, rule-oriented boarding school.
East Coast, kind of,
Yeah, like very much like copying what an Eton or a Harrow would be, but in America. And this new teacher, played by Robin Williams, one of the great Robin Williams performances. Yeah. It's kind of similar to his Good Will Hunting role as well. And he comes into this English class, and they have these textbooks on how to read poetry. Yeah. To understand poetry, you must break it down into its prose, form, and structure. And he gets them to literally rip out the pages. And I think most people at school have had those two different types of teachers. Yeah. The ones that literally bullet point you and teach you how to pass the exam, and you have those ones that like really force you to think outside the box. Yeah. And he's one of those teachers that takes them outside, and he's like, here's what it's about, love, and it's about feeling that no, but how does this poem make you feel? And various things happen in the play.
Because he like awakens. So a lot of the pupils like start to like pursue like their own passions and stuff. And
yes.
So there's one character.
They're all meant to be doctors and lawyers.
Yeah, exactly. So there's one character played by Robert Sean Leonard who wants to be more artistic and creative. And he has a very typical like father-son clash with his father who wants him to be, probably something
I can't remember,
straight-laced and serious. And he towards the end of the film ends up killing himself.
Yeah.
Right. And so the class does have this huge tragedy. The blame kind of gets laid at Robin Williams' feet,
and it's sort of this real like end of innocence moment where it represents them like really becoming men, and they're Mr. Keating's been fired, and they have this like one of the vice principals of the of the school who comes in. It's like, right, turn to page 76, and they're like, sir, we've ripped out those pages. It's like, fine, you can read out of my book. And then Mr. Keating comes in and he says, is it all right if I go to collect my stuff? Yes, Mr. Keating, you can do it now. And he goes to the end of the room, and then a character played by Ethan Hawke just stands up on his table and screams like, oh, Captain, my Captain, and the music swells.
Yeah.
And he's like, sit down, Mr. Keating, leave, sit down. The next pupil that stands will be expelled from this school. And one by one, all the pupils like find their courage, and they break out from the mold, and they all stand up and say, oh, Captain, my Captain is like, yes.
Yeah.
It's very
It
American.
is stirring, though. It is quite stirring.
And it's this wonderful, like, these boys to men, this cathartic. And you're just like, this teacher like can't control, because as a group, they're much more like, sit down, Mr. Keating, leave.
And I think it works because not all of the people stand up. There are some who are still too scared to do so.
Yeah.
But there are some, and it's the nice finishing of all those character arcs. God, I've only seen this film once.
And here you are, like, burnt into your brain.
My
It's
God,
scene,
like 12 years ago. And yeah, that some of them, like, it's the end of their arc. They feel compelled to stand up, and a wonderfully young Ethan Hawke in it.
Really
like,
fresh-faced.
Yeah, that is a nice ending and very iconic. And when Robin Williams died, Jimmy Fallon did this tribute to him on the show, and they showed like this reel of all his best stuff. When it cut back, Jimmy Fallon stood up on his desk and said, like, and he's almost crying, and it's beautiful. Great answer. Great point.
I thought we'd start with a nice one.
Have you seen the SNL spoof of that, where they've got like almost the exact same room, the same setup, the same costumes, and it's the same dialogue, and it's like, Mr. Keating, leave, and then one of them stands up and goes, I'm Captain, my Captain, and he turns around, he's got the tear in his eye. The other one stands up and goes, oh, Captain, my Captain, and then Pete Davidson plays one of the kids, and he goes, and he stands up and goes, oh, Captain, and he stands up and his head goes right into the ceiling fan, and it just cuts his head off, and there's just blood everywhere, and all of them are like, ah! And they're like kicking around his head, and they're like, oh my God.
I need to watch that 100%.
I'll send it to you.
Anyway. Yeah, and then Robin Williams, obviously a fantastic actor who didn't do enough of those kinds of roles, but what he did was fine. But he just has that wonderful Robin Williams knowing look, and all he says is, thank you, boys, and then leaves. Like, that's all that needed to be said.
That's a wonderful answer. Look, I mean, it gets me excited to talk about, okay, what are some of my favourite endings? There are a couple of honourable mentions I could do.
You're going to go good or bad first?
I'm going to go good.
Good.
And there are loads of good ones, but I'm going to give you maybe two.
Yeah.
I'll give you one, whatever. I'm going to give you a couple of good ones, right? So there are a couple of honourable mentions that we don't have time to get into is, Before Sunset, even though we were going to do spoilers, I don't want to ruin that film for you.
Yes, okay? No,
but
please
that
don't.
has got a really famous, like, sharp ending.
I should watch it and we should do a whole bit on it. Because I know you love it.
I could talk for ages. All three of those, totally. And it's a very famous, and it ends on a very, like, famous line that, like, if you know those films, like, it's just like when we did that movie quotes game a couple of weeks ago.
Yes,
that was one of the quotes. I was like, I can't say this, James. So that's just an honourable mention for that. I've got a couple of good ones, but I mean, I don't know how many you want me to reel off at you. The one that I think emotionally, sort of in the same way you have with Dead Poets Society, that really stands out for me is The Truman Show.
Oh, yeah.
And it really got me the last time I watched it, which was a couple of years ago. So everyone knows, obviously, The Truman Show. Jim Carrey's in this dome, you know, his life's a fictional TV show. I don't think I really need to go over the plot. I think most people are aware of The Truman Show. But obviously in the last third, the final climax is him setting sail and getting out, right? Sailing out of Seaview.
And that amazing moment when he hits.
Wait, no, I'm getting there. I'm getting the thing.
Sorry, I'm getting excited too.
The story. Yeah, he sets sail. I'm trying to build it up for the audience.
Sorry, guys, please let George finish what he's saying.
Anyway, he sets sail, and Ed Harris is hitting him with the waves, and Paul Giamatti's like, "No, I won't do it. I won't do it." And he's like,
Paul Giamatti, God bless you.
And then, like, Jim Carrey, he's like, "Is that the best you can do?"
Yeah.
Anyway, and then they stop it. They pull the weather off, and then his boat's just like cruising back in the flat water. And then, the mast of the boat just crashes into the end of the set.
Yeah.
And it's this woman. But that's not the moment that really gets me. The moment is that Jim Carrey then, like, climbs down, or Truman, I should say. Truman climbs down from the boat, and he's, like, touching the wall, and he's walking along it. And then the music's playing. And he doesn't understand. He's so confused. Because this is literally someone confronting the limits of their reality.
Yeah.
And he starts slamming against the wall, and he's like it's like this, like, primal reaction, like a monkey in a cage, just like hitting the wall, and he's like, and the music is swelling, and he's just banging against it, and that really got me the last time I saw it, because I was like, oh my God, what that just speaks to like the human in like all of us. That is such primal reaction.
Yeah.
And then the music they play when he reaches the wall is a track called Father Colby's Preaching, which I recommend everyone just go and seek out because it's so moving. So when you say great endings, I mean, that's not even the very end. That, there is still the bit when he says, good afternoon, good evening. And then, and obviously, actually, that's such a wonderful sequence because when he says, I'm going to leave, he opens the door and he just steps through the door. And I love that you don't see what's on the other side of the door. Yeah. And you cut to the woman running down the stairs being like, Truman. And then the final shot of that film is the guys in like the car park who are watching it on TV. And they go, yeah, woo! Oh,
the whole world is watching,
the whole world. And they go, yeah. What else is on? And then that's the end of the film, and that's so good. So just that little bit of satire, but that sounds clear with me.
Yeah, and I think he does such a great job at trying to, present what is an unimaginable discovery of what would it be like to completely reach the limits of whatever you had perceived as more of, because he has an idea of something else out there, but he doesn't know that it. And also
the cruelty of the fact that it's like a painted set.
Yeah,
it's just so cruel and it's like so crude. And also, he's probably dealing with the fact that he never thought it would be a wall, just a painted wall with like a bit you can walk along.
There's that great moment somewhere in the middle where it starts raining in a single spotlight.
And
it's just on him, and he steps out of it and goes, oh, and then it all starts raining, and he's just like, you would lose your mind if that happened.
We should do a rewatch of that.
I think, it's such a good film. Look at us gushing.
I mean, I could give you more if you want. I mean, do you want to get the good ones?
Hold on. We've just done some glowing, gushing, two like undisputable great films. Let's go now. I want to hear your own ending that you find really annoying. The one that you think is an unsuccessful ending.
I struggled when I was thinking about this. There are films that I can think of that have bad endings, but I haven't seen them in such a long time that I can only mention them in passing. So, for example, War of the Worlds.
That's one of mine.
Oh, really? Right?
Yes.
Because that's the one. From what I remember, War of the Worlds is a pretty fine film.
Yeah,
but the ending is annoying because it's when they have that really sappy reunion, right, in the streets with the kid comes back, the son who walked into like a fireball earlier in the film is just suddenly reunited. I remember seeing that at the cinema with my dad, and he came out and he was like fuming about the ending. He was like, "That is so cheesy."
Because in the end, it was just about a bunch of nothing. Because people have compared that film, or that ending, because I think the ending of War of the Worlds is that they got an infection or they were allergic
I like
to
that. Yeah, but I've seen people be angry about that. That is the original ending in the original War of the Worlds book from the 1800s, the H.G. Wells novel. Yeah. And I like the fact it's almost like it's the aliens' hubris, like they didn't account for the thing you can't see on Earth.
Right.
Okay?
Yeah.
I don't have a problem with that being the ending.
Okay. So like that, I even if it's part of the book, the way that film portrayed whatever Tom Cruise father dynamic thing, and he wants to protect his daughter from the horrors of what's going on, and his son has this like purpose to grow up and run his own path. I'm so uninterested in where that film took Tom Cruise at the end of it, because it didn't really seem to go anywhere, and that's why I think it doesn't work, because it just like they meet, as you said, they meet up haphazardly, and then the alien kind of spills out the ship, and it's all fine. Whereas I know people are annoyed at the film Signs. Which I like. Which I like, which has a similar thing where they're allergic to water in the end, and he happens to live in a house with like a million glasses of water.
And also they come to a planet that is like surrounded by water. Yeah.
But that has the whole like, it's a bit of a cliche, but Mel Gibson's getting over the death of his wife. Like the struggle. This is like really like script writing 101, but the struggle with the aliens is an internal struggle.
Yes,
with Mel
because
Gibson, his wife trying to find a place with his kids. Right. That I go, okay, this was a metaphor. I understand the end.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, the final shot in Signs is Mel Gibson comes out of his bedroom or whatever, and he's a priest again.
Yes.
He's refound his faith.
Of course, yes. He's refound his faith.
Like, when I watched that, the last time I watched that, I was like, this really isn't about aliens at all. This is really about... I was like, Shyamalan has kind of got the depth here, just about to pull it off.
And it's a good suspenseful thrill.
I still like it at the end of Signs. I know we're going to be talking about War of the Worlds, but I still like it at the end of Signs when... That's such a good reveal because he pulls the TV out. They think there's no aliens. Remember, they pull the TV out,
and it's in the reflection.
And it's the reflection of the TV. And it's also like you've got this disjointed family unit of Mel Gibson, who's a widower. You've got Joaquin Phoenix plays his younger brother.
Yeah.
You've got the two children, and they have to come together. Remember, Mel Gibson says to Joaquin Phoenix, "Get your baseball bat."
Yeah.
Because isn't the subplot
Fly Away Home? Or
isn't the subplot that Joaquin Phoenix used to be like a really hot shot baseball player, and he's kind of like went nowhere with his life.
Yeah.
And then he gets the base, and this is his moment to like. His moment to save
the like home run or like take it home. I don't know what
because the
says.
alien's got the daughter, and Yeah, and he hits him, and then it like all comes together. And then the son has an asthma attack, and it's unclear whether the son survives.
And the alien gives him like the poison mist in his face.
Oh, he has the sun in his hands. That's right. Yeah.
I will give. There's still a scene that even when I catch it on the internet, it's really scary. It's the little girl's birthday party, the found footage where all the kids are watching, and the alien walks past the hedges, and it does this look, and like Joaquin Phoenix and the kid are watching it, and he like jumps back, and like it's. I promise you, that's still scary.
Do you remember the scene with the knife as well?
Yeah, the knife. Yeah. God, maybe I need to rewatch that.
Start a list. Make notes.
You're like, we didn't rewatch that film.
Okay, sorry. So War of the Worlds, though. I mean,
and there's another thing that really winds me up about War of the Worlds, which is how they use the lightning to go down underground. And there's this moment where he comes out and this news truck with like a news camera has captured footage of the lightning going into the earth. And he slows down his camera, and there are 3 frames of the lightning and the little like pod that goes underground. And now I just think, do you have any idea how quick lightning flashes? And your little news camera. No, it's not the speed of light. The speed at which it travels to you is the speed of light. Like the speed of electricity is so fast. And do you know how bright lightning is that's 10 feet away from you? And the fact that he's exposed for lightning and a thing. And then you've got 3 frames of lightning. I'm like, there's no way in the world you would ever be able to see that happening as clearly on your news camera.
In this film about aliens invading, your issue is the
as a videographer.
As a videographer, okay.
I'm like, what camera?
All right.
There's no camera in the world that could capture that in 3 frames. Because I would shout out to the slow-mo guys that shoot everything in slow motion on YouTube, and they did a lightning storm. And the speed that you have to shoot to capture lightning, even just a flash for like 2 seconds, is like, it's insane. It's not the speed of light, but it's like insane.
You contact Mr. Spielberg and you tell him about
Mr. Spielberg, as a fellow video enthusiast myself.
Thought to point out a glaring error in your 2005 film.
As an accomplished filmmaker yourself, I thought you would have flagged this in pre-production. Alas, here we are.
Okay, so that's a War of the Worlds is interesting. That's when you had
an accidental signs working, I guess.
Accidental waffle. Another ending that I have an ending that's a question mark.
Okay.
Do you think the ending for Uncut Gems is a good ending or a bad ending?
Good ending.
You think it's a good ending?
Yes.
So Uncut Gems, Adam Sandler's
Uncut
Gems has been harassed, harangued, shouted at all across New York. The whole 90 minutes of that film, however long, is just a giant argument.
It's a heart attack, that film.
And it culminates in this gambling addict finally winning big, jubilating, and he opens the door to the henchman he's kept in this glass cabinet, and the henchman immediately shoots him in the head, and that's the end of the film. And I mean, I asked because I don't know how I felt about that as well, that ending. I mean, I don't think I love Uncut Gems as far as many other my friends do. Like
I really like it.
I know you really I just think it's my disposition. I just don't think I enjoy being in that environment.
You're stressed.
Yeah, it's just me. Nish Kumar on the Films to Be Buried With podcast with Brett Goldstein was like, he considers that for the ending of that film not just to be a good ending, he considers it to be a happy ending, because he's like, that guy Adam Sandler, what's his name? Howie?
I can't remember the name. Yeah.
He would have lost that money he won.
That's what I'm
saying. He would continue to do this cycle. For this guy's almost putting him out of his misery. Yeah. And that's why actually when you look at Adam Sandler, he's got a massive smile on his face when he goes towards him. And actually when he's on the floor dead,
it was always going to end that way. Like if you spend 80 plus minutes with that character, at that point it's so exhausting to see him go. I'm like, you are just going to end up dead, and that is it sounds really horrible, but that is the only true way for that character to go. Yeah. It's the only rightful end. What's the other option? He gets away with it? Like no, like he's clearly irreconcilable.
He's a tragic figure from the beginning. It was actually it's like Death of a Salesman. He's like, this guy is doomed to be dead at the end. Okay, fair enough. I agree. What about Hereditary? Do you think that's a good ending?
Less so. I think it's a cool ending. I don't think it is the most satisfying ending.
Is that because it's too mumbo jumbo-y with like the Hail King
It takes
payment?
a pretty big leap, and I think if you wanted more answers, look, I think in so many ways I could say it leaves so much for interpretation. It lets your imagination fill in the rest, kind of like how Blair Witch Project refused to show you a lot of stuff.
You know what? It's so funny. Not to interrupt you.
No,
I
that's
mean,
fine.
I think you made your point there about Hereditary.
Yeah.
Just talking about it has reminded me of a film ending that I do really like. That I think is really effective. And in that genre, have you seen Kill List?
No.
Oh, okay. So, and I don't want to ruin that for you.
Okay,
actually,
fine.
Because you like horror films and you
Yes.
like good movies.
Oh, I should watch Kill List.
Kill List is I've seen it twice. Is really, really unnerving.
Yeah.
And the ending of that film, particularly the last 15 minutes, are proper like chilling stuff. And when it ends, you're literally like, what the fuck? I wouldn't be surprised on the first viewing if you're like, I don't really understand what's happened.
Okay.
But it's just chilling. The ending of Kill List is like to your core chilling. So I think you better be making notes because there's loads. We would have to do like an episode where we go over all the films that
we said we
on
have
list.
to see and just do them.
And it also the ending of Blair Witch I think is very effective as well.
Yes.
Specific. It's not like a great ending to like in the annals of cinema, but for that film.
And if you take away all the ways in which so many other films took that format and you go, okay, no, this was the first, probably. And like that's how much it showed you, and you were left to just go to school and be like, oh my god, did you see that film? I think it was real, it was real, like the found footage thing. And that's why it was so effective, because what it didn't show you is because it couldn't. It was actually a found footage film. But yeah, like just thinking, sorry, you brought up Hereditary, which is Ari Aster film, and Midsummer, which I think has a better ending, but the stuff in the middle, it started to lose me. Whereas Hereditary had me, and then at the end, I still liked Hereditary, but at the end, don't get me wrong, the scene of the person floating up into the treehouse, I'll never forget. Burnt into my retinas. But Midsummer, I got to the point where I was like, I think you've lost me. I was so in. I was so in. It had that descent into the darkness of this thing. It was so there. And then at the end, I thought it was a good ending.
I know what you mean, though. For the narrative logic of that film, to satisfy the concluding part of that story, ending makes total sense.
Yes.
I see people like that's a breakup film. I get it. But I just don't need to see Jack Raynor in a bear costume getting burnt alive.
And the rest. That film. It's the stuff in the middle.
That film. That film I found so silly. It was like, dude, where's my ritual? That's it was like, what's going on? Like, these chicks, man, they're like kind of crazy. And they're all flowers and stuff. And they're
sticks
like,
of mushrooms, man.
Yeah, man. Like what?
I really want to write my paper, my dissertation.
Yeah, and I feel like the whole film's like, oh, we're gonna scare you in a minute, and you're like, okay, go on, and they're like, we're gonna scare you with this, and you're like, no, that's just a bit weird, it's a bit silly. Oh, how about this?
It'll take you a good 2 days to get that film out of your head.
Sure,
you won't be able to stop thinking about it for a good 2 days. You'll be like, fucking hell.
Yeah, but I
remember that scene.
Unlike Hereditary, which was like, oh god, I can't get that out of my soul. But I feel like Midsummer's just like, what? Yeah. But Florence Pugh is absolute queen in that, And
I'll be turning up to Ari Aster's next film.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. We'll be talking about it.
Yeah,
sure,
I'll 100% be there.
Just a quick one.
This episode of Pulp Kitchen is brought to you by Noggin HQ.
Noggin HQ is a hot new credit referencing agency for Gen Z and millennials. They are revolutionizing the way that credit scoring is done by making it cheaper, simpler, and easier.
If you're interested, you're under 30, and you want to start building a better credit score, follow @NogginHQ now on all social media platforms. Back to the show.
Should we talk about another good one? Can I give you another good one?
Yes, you can give me another good one. Go on.
I mean, I'll try and get through them as quickly as I can because I've got many in my head. I'm going to give you another good one I love. There Will Be Blood.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. But There Will Be Blood, it's not just a great ending. There Will Be Blood is a great ending because the film literally builds to what is essentially like a 20-minute scene of two people in one room.
How long is that film?
That film's probably good, I'd say 2 hours, 10 minutes. But it's probably a 2.5.
Okay, yeah.
It's a long film and it covers, several decades. And it all, the film covers this tense struggle between Daniel Day-Lewis and Paul Dano. Paul Dano is the preacher, Daniel Day-Lewis is the oil man, and the power struggle between them. And it's literally like the story of like America. You've got religion and you've got greed and capitalism. This clashing.
Rising tension the whole time.
Yeah, and you have, the moment where Daniel Day-Lewis like slaps Paul Dano down in the mud and the oil and he embarrasses him. And then there's a bit later where Paul Dano embarrasses Daniel Day-Lewis by making him like repent in front of all of his conversion just so he can get this thing.
You can tell that he's seething inside.
And this bitterness and bitterness, bit like an oil well about to explode, happens in this final scene where it's Daniel Day-Lewis, haggard, grey, in the basement bowling alley of his mansion, having just had a scene that is so tough with his deaf son. Yeah. Do you remember when he's just like, "You're a bastard in a basket." HW. Yeah. And then Paul Dano comes to visit him. You know, Paul Dano's reptile, and they're almost at this point they're kind of relics because Daniel Day-Lewis is like old and cranky, and
I mean, they're both so unlikable in different ways, and you root for neither of them.
And Paul Dano thinks he's still winning. He says, "Oh yeah, I've got this area of land I want to drill and stuff." Yes. And then Daniel Day-Lewis teases him and makes him like renounce God, and then he does his. I want you to say, I am a false prophet. God is a superstition. Yeah. And he forces it, and then eventually he says, "Louder, Eli, imagine your congregation is all the way at the back." And he says, "I'm a false prophet and God is a superstition." He goes, "Yeah, those areas have been drilled." And there's just that silence, and Paul Dano says, "What?" Anyway, then the conversation builds, and he mocks Paul Dano, and that's when he does if you have a milkshake, and I have a milkshake, and it streams from across the room. And then it just erupts into a spontaneous bit of violence, and he throws Paul Dano across the room. He chases him, and he throws these wooden bowling pins at him.
It's also almost a quite pathetic fallout to such an epic.
Yeah, because Daniel Day-Lewis is clumsy and old, and Paul Dano is so like slimy that he's like slipping around and he's like crawling on his hands and knees, and then Daniel Day-Lewis eventually just clobbers him to death with this wooden pin, and he's just sat there, and like the blood is like coming out of his head, and his like, you know, his butler comes down. He's like, "Is everything okay?" And he just says, "I'm finished." And it goes, there will be blood. Yeah. And it's just such a brilliant, as a scene. If we were to have a separate episode about our favorite scenes in film, that for me is just an amazing scene. Yeah. And the whole film is made of amazing scenes. And it's just such a great way to end that story and go out. And every time, I remember the first time I watched that, people just think, "Wow, this is powerful."
Just hearing you do Daniel Day-Lewis in that film, and hearing like the intonation and the way in which he draws out words. No other performance has ever sounded like that. No other act. I've never seen a performance I'm like, holy shit, he is really like, that is a performance I've never seen before. And you just like, he's one of those actors that you see him doing that, and I'm never going to see anything of that start again. I don't think we talked about like Jim Carrey, only he could have done that role. Yeah. I think Daniel Day-Lewis would only ever have done that performance. I don't think another phenomenal actor would ever give that performance ever again. And it's just, haven't seen it. Like, if you want to see one of the best actors ever in the top of their game, it really is.
I mean, that's why I had when I saw Phantom Thread. I remember seeing his performance in Phantom Thread and just thinking, like, swooning. It's at the scene when he orders the breakfast. I was like, he is just so involved and so deeply lost in this character.
And how different is that performance? If you think about, like,
stop it, enough.
Stop it. Why are you doing this?
Yeah, he's so different. Do you know what? Here's my dilemma.
Okay.
Here's my dilemma. I want to show my girlfriend There Will Be Blood because it's a fantastic film. The Guardian rated it as the best film of the 21st century so far, okay?
Nice, okay. Yeah,
however,
sure, why not?
It's a bit of a tough sell because I'm like, are there any female characters?
Yeah.
No. Yes, but I don't think they speak. No. There's a lot of silence. There is a little bit of blood. But the performance is, I think, on objectively...
Unmissable.
It's unmissable, yeah.
I've got one which I think is going to ruffle some feathers.
Oh, a bad ending of a film?
No, this is a film that I think has a good ending.
Okay.
And I think when I say this, some people might go, "How could you?" And I think Interstellar has a good ending.
I'd agree with that.
Thank you.
But then I would also,
Depends where we start the ending. I want to just say it depends in that film where we start the ending.
Yes, because okay, so we're talking last 10 minutes, last half an hour?
So I would just proclaim myself as an Interstellar apologist, not a fanboy. I acknowledge that film for its flaws.
Yes,
yet I still love it.
I think I'm on the same page as you.
Right. Interstellar, Christopher Nolan's sweeping sci-fi epic. They have to go far away to through a wormhole to go find the cure for time and gravity. And there's this big moment in Interstellar where people are either really on board or you go, "That's ridiculous, I'm not in." Okay? And depending on how much that moment pisses you off, the film either lost you there and you wanted to go home and you were done, or you were so swept up in the emotion of that connection and how beautifully crafted, even though it's such a leap in science and logic to get to that, I was like, how could anyone not be crying right now? It's so beautifully.
At what specific
told.
moment is this? The wormhole.
This is the moment where he I'm about to say it. He gets into a fourth dimension tesseract, which beings from the future have built for him, which allows him to see time represented as a physical dimension and not a linear one. And he's able to manipulate gravity waves on his daughter's watch from years in the future across Morse code through space time, which gives her the equation to understand gravity as. Understand the formula of how to beat gravity, which allows her to be able to travel and pick him up and save humanity. Right? That's the best of my memories I can explain it. Okay, which is a lot. But I've watched the special features for Interstellar, and I've heard Christopher Nolan just beautifully talk about how he makes his films. And he told Hans Zimmer that when he was talking, when he wanted to, he didn't tell him what the project was. Yeah, he was coming off of Dark Knight Rises, and he said, with this score, all I'm going to say to you is I want you to think big. Like telling Hans Zimmer to think big, it's like, okay, well, what?
Yeah,
obviously.
Yeah.
And he's like, how big? And Nolan's like, big. And you've got this
bigger,
and also from Nolan, who already makes big films. But you've got this amazing score, which is organ and strings, and it you feel like you're literally sitting in a whole orchestra. But the one pulsating part through this whole score is two notes, bum 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 bum, and it's all about these two things connecting to each other across space and time. And it's this wonderful moment where father-daughter relationship. He abandoned her, and she only realized what he had done later in the future, and he didn't know what he would eventually do and why he'd done it till later. It's really a lot. But there's this moment where the score is reduced to its most simple theme, and it's these 2 points in time that are now reconnecting. And he goes in and sees his daughter, who's now at least like 30 or 40 years older than him. And they hold hands, and she's like, "How did you know I was your ghost?" And she's like, "Because my father told me." And then the score comes in.
So he's come back. He's been picked up now.
And he sees his grandkids, his great-great-grandchildren.
He's come through the Tesseract.
He's come through the Tesseract.
They've picked him up, and they say, "Your daughter's
saved
here."
humanity.
Yeah, he saves humanity, and his daughter's there, and his daughter is
80 years
like
old.
80 years old, like basically dying
on her deathbed.
And he goes, and he sees her, and he says like, she said like, I knew you'd be back.
I knew you'd be back.
And she says,
which is what like you were.
No, and then he says, how do you know? She said, because my dad promised me.
And then what she does so well is she's able to obviously forgive him and let him go. And he's like, where do I go? And she says, Brand. Go to Dr. Brand. And it reveals this moment because they've really been looking for a planet which can hold life on Earth. And there's this shot where Anne Hathaway's character, the music is sweeping, and Matthew McConaughey's getting on a ship to go find her, and she takes off her helmet and reveals that she's now found a planet where she can breathe, and you know that Matthew McConaughey is going to go to that planet to start a new thing. And I just thought it was so well crafted, and the score just sweeps right to the end.
It's the way that it cuts between him stealing a spaceship to go find her.
Yes.
And it follows her walking down the path, and as she does, it just reveals that there's a community there.
A little hub where and then she had like the embryos to make enough biodiversity to start a new society.
And it just, the music swells, and then it's,
Cut.
Interstellar. I agree with you. I mean, I totally get that the moment he goes through the wormhole and the Tesseract appears, and it's basically like Nolan going, you want to jump through hoops? I'll give you some fucking hoops to jump through.
I'll give you some plot.
Ridiculous. But the sheer scale, I think the secret ingredient to that whole film is the Hans Zimmer score, like you said. That score is so moving and beautiful. You can listen to it on its own. And
the way it starts and the two notes build, and it's even at its biggest point, it's still two notes.
There's actually like a 20-second sequence in the score when before he goes through the wormhole, the black hole. Sorry, before he goes through the black hole, that is so sublime that when I just like every time I hear it, I have to stop and listen to it properly. It's just so beautiful. It just carries you through, and I do think there is a moment in that film you just have to say, I've got to just go with this. Ride the wave, like the giant waves that you see earlier in the film. You've got to ride that. I
know the science, but don't. But what about me?
Yeah.
And then throw some science. I know, but
just I've actually often disagreed with people when they've said with Nolan's films, "Oh, don't think it, feel it." In Tenet, where they say, "Don't
try and understand this film."
They say, when the Clements Posey says, "Oh, don't think it, just feel it," and I actually rejected that with Tenet because I was like, that would be great if Tenet had a single beating emotion in it.
I agree.
But the characters didn't even have a name, and so I just thought that was just ridiculous.
Yeah.
But I do think that applies to Interstellar because there is an emotional heart to it. Yeah,
and also I've never seen like the sense of scale like properly portrayed on screen in that way.
Yeah.
Even like watching 2001, which obviously it takes huge inspiration from like the breathing and the astronaut suit and all of that. But there's that moment, especially if you saw it on a big screen, or ideally IMAX, when their tiny ship crawls across Saturn, and like obviously the wave, and then just making you feel like you are, and like being able to show what relativity, how it could manifest in so many ways is a really cool idea and tricky to do. But yeah, I'm glad you're on the same page. I know a lot of people find that film really annoying.
Hear them typing now.
As I said, I will defend it for a long time. So, one I think is really bad, famous. Did you ever see The Mist with the Stephen King book?
I know about the ending. I think I've even watched the ending on YouTube. It's very famous. Some people like it because
quite an engaging film. I'll give it that.
Yeah.
It's based on the Stephen King book of the same name. This mist falls over this town, and they all get locked in the grocery store, and all these monsters are like trying to break in.
And doesn't the mist change you as well, and like possesses you or makes you like a zombie or something?
Yes, and it's like what will humanity become when all of this? And, you know, for whatever reason, 4 characters remaining drive out in this car looking for life, looking for anything. And it's right towards the end. And their car runs out of petrol and they're just surrounded by mist. And they've got 4 bullets in a gun and they all take turns to kill themselves. And all the characters die. Oh, I think one survives.
Thomas Jane.
One character survives. He's just killed. Is it his child? I can't remember. Like 2 other people.
It's his like dad, his son, and his girlfriend,
and someone
whatever,
else, and they're all dead, and he's like gonna kill himself, and then the mist clears and the army tanks thing just start rolling in. And you're just like, it happens. This is like in the last 60 seconds. You're just like, what?
And he's screaming, and he's like, no,
he's screaming, and I'm like, what is the? What? Why is that satisfying?
Yeah, how is that? Yeah, what does that?
So
give you?
the army just came in the end, and saved them all. What a like. I guess you could say there's a beauty in its happenstance, but it's one of those where you go, huh?
And also just like, ugh.
Yeah.
But that's just depressing for the sake of being depressing.
What an uninteresting solution to that problem. Yeah, we're gonna like get tanked. The army came and we got tanks. We blew up the aliens or the monsters. That's just one I know.
All right, I'm gonna run through a couple of endings for you. The Thing. I think
The Thing.
That's a really good ending.
One.
Yeah, that idea. So, The Thing is this really good, there's a being and it can take the shape of other people. And so there's a lot of thing about identity in it. And at the end, they like blow up the whole space station. They blow up the whole research station, which is in Antarctica. Yeah. And it's just Kurt Russell like sitting in the snow, like slowly freezing. And then one of the other guys from the station comes out and they look at each other and they can't trust each other because the thing could be either one of them. And they sit there and, Kurt Russell's got the flamethrower and the other guy's got like a gun. And they sit there and they sort of say, fire's warmed things up a bit. And they go, yeah. And he says, what do you think? What should we do now? And they sort of say, why don't we just sit here and wait and see?
Yeah.
And then the theme comes in, boom, boom, boom. And the whole idea, lots of people have written about it, been like, oh, is that because Kurt Russell's secretly the thing? Or is Keith David the thing? Or are they both the thing? And it's like, no, my interpretation is neither of one of them is the thing. Yeah. The thing is dead, but the thing has won because it's made them not trust each other. So they're both going to die. They're both going to freeze. They're both human. But the point is that's the final victory of the thing.
The thing was all the friends we made along the way.
Oh, stop it. I think that's a great ending.
Yeah, it's great ending, absolutely.
Usual Suspects.
Yes.
Great twist ending. Great off-parodied, verbal kints on the back. It's all behind him the whole time. There's a Key and Peele sketch which parodies the ending of Usual Suspects. I'll have to send you.
Send it to me.
7.
Yes.
Very famous.
What's in the box?
Yeah, a bit like
Don't
The Mist.
become rage. What is it?
No, if you kill him, he will win. It's
will
like,
win,
yes. John Doe has the upper hand.
Yeah.
That's a bit like The Mist, a very famous downbeat ending that just is like, fuck, yeah, okay. Well.
Oh, sorry, just one quick one that's really good. Psycho.
Is that a good ending?
I think so, because I remember watching that as a kid and I was pretty scared throughout, but nothing terrified me more than seeing Norman Bates's face look directly at the camera and smile.
I mean, and haven't they done? They also superimposed the mother's skeleton.
Yes, so this goes there, and there's the whole thing with the fly, and because you have his internal thoughts throughout that film, and then like that moment where he looks at you, I was terrified, and that smile is burnt into my eyes, and I can't forget it.
That's a very, very iconic moment. I agree.
Super iconic.
The only thing is, it's like, I love Psycho. It's a great film.
Yeah.
It's just that, like, it has all this intrigue and all this everything, and then in the last scene, they basically explain everything. They get like a professional psychiatrist to come in and go, "What was happening was that Norman was confused.
Sure.
His mother was doing this." And,
Yeah.
and it's like, oh, we just got to tie everything up in a neat little bow here. It was the, 1960.
It's a nice little fourth wall breaking moment almost.
But yeah, the end. But I do agree that's really nice. Also, the final shot of Psycho is the car being pulled out of the swamp.
Yeah.
And I remember someone writing once, like, why is there a swamp in the middle of the desert? It's set in the desert.
It is,
like,
yeah.
how does there be a swamp out back? Yeah.
A little boggy thing.
Anyway.
I'll give a shout out to the final shot of Raiders of the Lost Ark when the Ark of the Covenant gets put into that box for storage and it's wheeled out into all that. And you realize you're in this vast warehouse and it's that wonderful thing where your imagination just goes and you're like, oh, think about all the little trinkets and things that are in this little
To be
society.
seen again in Indiana Jones 4. Do you remember when they...
Oh, I hate that they went there. Just don't go. And then you actually see the Ark again. Yeah. Indiana Jones.
I think a really good ending of a recent film is the ending of Call Me By Your Name.
Yes.
Just that prolonged take of Timothée Chalamet crying into the fire.
Less was more for that.
Yeah.
And you understand exactly everything that's going on in his mind. And it's a beautiful like musical moment as well.
Yeah, that Sufjan Stevens song just coming in. And what I love is, because they talked at one point that they were going to do a sequel. And I was like, no, it's over. And they've cancelled that now, thankfully. But that's what I liked about the ending. It was like, that's why he's crying in the face. Like, it's over. It's summer, like it's literally winter. It's like that last grain of hope, and he has the phone call, but it's like, this is it. That's what he's realizing. He carries it so well on his face. He's always experiencing loss, but that's the final step of him growing up. It's like grief.
He was always, I think, Timothée Chalamet, a pretty hot prospect leading into that film, but that completely put him on the map as the go-to kid. He's not a kid anymore, but like that for that kind of thing.
The thing with Timothée Chalamet is that
Do you think he's doing a Jennifer Lawrence? He's in too much right now.
No, not necessarily. I think that it's because he's in a lot. I'm almost inclined to be like, you almost feel predisposed to go, oh, any minute now he's going to be annoying, and any minute now he's going to... But I have to say, every single film I've seen him in, he's always done a good performance.
Yeah.
Like, Beautiful Boy, great performance. Call Me By Your Name, great performance. Lady Bird, great. Dune, great.
Don't Look
The
Up,
King,
great. I haven't seen The King.
Oh, I really liked it.
Yeah.
I liked The King. Didn't get a good review, but I liked it.
Yeah, sure.
So, he's solid. I want to give a quick shout out as well, if we've got time, to a TV ending. Okay. One that is really good. Do you ever watch Catastrophe with Sharon Horgan and Rob Delaney?
No.
Okay, so that's about really funny, real drama, painfully funny show about a Irish woman and an American guy who hook up in London, have a one-night stand. They're in like their late 30s. And then she gets pregnant, and so he moves over to London, and he's just like, I guess we just have to live together now and like get married, and like you're not going to get rid of this child. I guess we just raise this child together, and then they start a family, and then the consequent series are about the struggles of them living together, and it's really funny and painfully accurate. It's beautiful, and the final episode of that show at the end of season 4 is they're in America because he's American, and they're sitting on the beach, and like they've been through so much. There's been like accusations of infidelity, and they might move back to America, and they're sat on this beach with a huge bay across from them, and she's just found out she's pregnant with a third child, and they're already struggling, and like the prospect of a third child is like really weighing them down, and they have this conversation on the beach, and then they realize like, it's okay, we can do it, it's just going to be life, we're just going to go with it, and they're daunted by the fact that they're getting older and that like life might not be fun anymore. And she says, no, come on, it is fun. Like, come on. She takes off her clothes. She's got her swimming costume underneath. And he's like, what are you doing? She says, no, come on, we're still fun. And she just dives into the water and starts swimming out. And he goes, yeah. And she says, the kids are asleep in the car. Come on, it's fine. Yeah. And he like looks behind him. There's a sign that says, strong currents, don't swim.
Right.
And he's got this look on his face. And he calls after her. And she still goes. And he says, okay. And he starts taking his clothes off. And then he goes into the water. And they like swim out. And they're laughing, they're having a good time, and you're with them, and they're getting further and further away. And then there's a really long shot of them in the bay with their clothes, their discarded clothes strewn on the rocks in like shallow focus. And then you lose them in the focus, and the focus becomes about the clothes. And there's just this really eerie thing where, and then the camera zooms out, and they just become like little tiny dots in the water. And you're like, are they about to die? Are they about to drown?
Yeah.
And there's this subtle inference that a massive tragedy is about to happen.
Yeah.
But equally, it's also like a really beautiful, fun moment. And what the whole ending is, it's a comment on like, they've had this like crisis moment and they've decided to go forward in life. And that whole ending is like, you don't know what is about to happen next in life at all. There could be tragedy or beauty around any corner in life. You don't know that. And often in the same moment. And how we leave these characters, we don't know. So you've got. Do you see what I'm saying? And that I know you don't know this show.
No, but like it's interesting this running theme of like sometimes the lesson ending shows you the more effective it is. Like trying to tie the knot too much can sometimes confuse and muddle it versus actually leaving the imagination to go.
Exactly, and they pull out and they play a song by Arcade Fire like The Suburbs Continued, and it's like this like string song, and you're like. And it just gives you, you're right, the less.
Yeah.
Gives you more to think about than wrapping things up conclusively.
Even Interstellar, right, to go back to it, which is a lot of plot happening, it still goes, look at all that could happen. Yeah. You'll let you fill it in.
So for me, Catastrophe could be the best TV ending.
Yeah.
One of them.
Yeah, I should check it out. It's a good show. There's one more I want to talk about, which is I think it's one of my favorite films. And it's Steve McQueen's Shame, starring Michael Fassbender.
Right, okay.
This is a film that... Have you seen it only once? Yeah. This is a film that I think... You can hear the ending and it doesn't spoil it for you because I think it really deserves to be watched again. And this is, I still think it's one of Michael Fassbender's best performances. And it's essentially about this character called Brandon who lives this really solitary, clinical life, and he's completely emotionally closed off. And it's about basically his desire for sex and how he finds it impossible to create personal, empathetic relationships with anyone. And he lives this very nomadic life where he has his routine and he sticks to it. And he has these exchanges with women and sometimes men, and it's completely clinical and closed off. And his whole world sort of gets thrown out of it when his sister called Sis, played by Carey Mulligan, comes in, who's the complete opposite. She's like emotionally vulnerable and empathetic, and she wants to receive love, and she's trying to get something from him. And there's kind of this implication that they've suffered a hard childhood, and that whatever it was, abuse or trauma, has manifested in completely different ways for these two characters. There's this sequence that happens in the opening third of Shame, where you're getting to know about this character called Brandon, and he is on the subway in New York. And just to let you know, this film, although Michael Fassbender is so closed off throughout the whole film, it has this sweeping classical score that runs all the way through it, and it really tells you the kind of damage and trauma that must be going on inside him, and it really informs your opinion of that character. So he has this interaction where he's on the subway and he sees this woman sitting across from him who's beautiful, and she's looking at him in this really flirty way. And she's smiling at him, and he like locks eyes with her. And there's this sense that they're both very sexually attracted to each other, and they're going to go get off this train. It's all like completely unsaid. They're going to go get off this train and go do whatever. She stands up and she grabs the pole of the tube and reveals that she's got a wedding ring. And he sees that she's got a wedding ring, doesn't care. He's still like, he stands up, pursues her after the subway. She then has this feeling of guilt, of shame, really, that she shouldn't be flirting on the tube, that this would be an affair. And she runs away, and he loses her. Throughout that film, there's like a real horrible tragedy that happens to Brandon, and all of this stuff puts into question the way that he's lived his entire life and whether or not he should be more open up and closed off, and he becomes completely exasperated by the way in which he views sex, and even like just all interpersonal relationships, and he's completely drained and exhausted, and he's like ashamed of who he is and exasperated. And the very last scene of this film, he gets onto a subway, and the exact same woman is there smiling at him. She takes the pole, she's got a wedding ring. And the last shot of the film is Michael Fassbender just looking up at her, and it then cuts, and you don't know what he's about to do.
Whether he's changed or
whether
not.
He's changed. I interpret it as he is going to stand up, but he just feels so completely destroyed within himself that he can't do it. And then that last scene, the score is not there, and it doesn't tell you how you're meant to be feeling, and it's just the sound of the subway, and it just locks in his eyes. And there's so much in what Michael Fassbender's doing by portraying so little. His face is like neutral, but just behind his eyes you can see this sense of like, I don't know what I'm going to do, or if I'm going to hate myself for what I'm about to do. And there are very few lines in Shame, but the way in which it artistically like shows you to see what someone inside their mind is feeling without someone being extroverted is so well done, and it's a really, really great ending to a film, and you'll leave that being like, film.
I need to rewatch it.
You do.
I do.
Yeah. And that doesn't ruin the film.
No, I know. I remember that, but I don't really remember anything in the middle. So
I remember watching it, and then I wanted to rewatch it like 3 or 4 weeks later, and I did.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Great.
This has been a lot of gushing for us. It's been
a
quite
lot of gushing,
cathartic
but we've
to
covered
just
it all.
talk about the
Even
films
talking
that
to you, I'm thinking of loads more, but we could be here all night. So let us know, people. Let us know what endings.
What ending do you think is really well crafted, stuck the landing, did a fitting tribute to what was, and then
what didn't work?
What didn't work? What is an ending that? I'd love to hear more people comment below. Be like, is there an ending that a film that was really good and then just completely lost it?
What film fell apart?
Yes,
with the ending.
Like, did a Game of Thrones style of like properly drop the ball.
I was going to bring that up, but I just didn't want to. That's just a whole other topic.
It's done.
It's done.
I mentioned Lost earlier in the episode, which the reasons for that.
And also, if you disagree, like, do you think that there was a bad ending that we said that you think is a good ending, or vice versa? Let us know.
Yeah, you can email us hello@Pulp Kitchen Podcast.
Or DM us. We're
doing our outro. Don't forget, let's do it. We do new episodes of this show every single Wednesday, our numbered episodes at least. But you'll notice if you follow us on all these channels, we post videos throughout the week. So follow us on TikTok, YouTube, Spotify, Apple, and you'll get so much more content than what we do in this episode.
You've left nothing for me to say. I mean, that's great.
Follow us.
Follow us, like and subscribe.
Yeah, we say like every Wednesday when we post the episode, but like every day, most days, assuming we got
content
a good episode, there's just loads of film stuff out there, reviews, more like sort of editorially games,
opinions, reviews, games, impressions,
all of it.
See you next week.
See you next week.